Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome back to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to thank you back. This is episode 275 of the Snob OS Show. As per usual, we want to thank everybody that's been listening to us for thus far. We just definitely want to send a special shout out to all of those who are supporting us financially. Please, if you want to become a financial supporter, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast and support us financially. As a thank you, you'll get access to the show early. You'll get access to live content. You'll get access to exclusive content that we don't air on this regular show that airs on Friday. So definitely go show us some love, say thank you, show support so we can keep this train going. So we're definitely going to keep the train going by starting off with a lowdown where we talk all things Apple. First thing we're going to talk about is we talked about in the pre-show, we talked about the CrowdStrike outage. We're not going to go on that any deeper because the Earth should know by now what happened with CrowdStrike. But we do want to talk about guess who that was not affected by CrowdStrike. Anybody or any servers that run on Linux was not affected. Also, any Macs were not affected by CrowdStrike. Now, that sounds dope to say, but maybe not be the flex that we think it is because not too many enterprise grade, worldwide, global environments run purely on Mac servers. There are some companies that do it. Of course, Apple probably does it. Surprisingly, I bet Apple probably has some of their data farms that run on PCs. That's a little inside baseball, but there are some services out there that'll enable you to run your whole environment off of a server that runs off Mac Minis. You know, Mac Minis have always been good for running as servers. I actually run one as a quote unquote server for my house. But all that to say, Macs were not affected at all. Linux wasn't affected at all. The CrowdStrike software runs primarily exclusively on PCs. So any company out there that runs a PC server that also has CrowdStrike on it affected all those, which is why most everything was shut down earlier this week, late last week. So just want to get your thoughts on, should companies start to think of splitting up some of their server farms and data farms and having them run on Windows and on Linux and on Mac? Or is this just a blip that was eventually going to happen and the companies will right themselves? But since PCs are so cheap, since PCs are so widely used, they're going to maintain or continue to be the main use for global enterprise server systems.
I think PCs are going to be continued to be used for the primary reason that you said. They're cheap. I mean, it's not very expensive unless if you think of running a full on Mac enterprise level system. There are some companies that do it, even though they probably have some part of their infrastructure on Windows. There are some companies that mostly have use either Mac or Linux. But what I think will happen is there are probably some software engineers in these companies working on tools that will allow them to, because like you aren't on the pre-show, but if you are a Patreon supporter, you would know that you had to manually, reinstall these machines in safe mode to be able to get them, out of this loop, so to speak. And it's one of those things where I think there's probably some tools teams, most of the tools teams in these companies are working on some sort of in-house tools to be able to remedy some of these issues. I think they are going to likely have a little bit more diversity. I know that's like a word you're not supposed to use, but diversity in their infrastructure. I think, there are a lot of solution architects who are very busy, who are going to be very busy the rest of the year. There are a lot of tools teams that are going to be very busy as well, because replacing enterprise level hardware and software is going to be very expensive. And that's not going to be a financial burden that these companies are going to want to take on, but they are going to want to be able to find ways that they can mitigate these types of things from happening again. And I think that's going to be on the infrastructure side, and maybe some software tools that they create in house to be able to manage this type of thing.
Yep, definitely diversity will be needed, because it is crazy that CrowdStrike, I mean, I don't want to call it a monopoly, but since they
But
are on most of these computers and all of these computers went down, I'm pretty sure corporations, governments, regulation will
yeah,
take a look at this and be like, hey, I'm gonna need y'all to split some things up, quit consolidating everything, maybe even look into why, look closer into regulations when companies decide to buy each other or absorb other companies. It's like, all right, you're going to absorb this company and they had this crazy consumer base and your company already had this crazy consumer base. How does that affect the consumer base globally? Is
yeah,
that going to bottleneck everything? And if so, there may be some companies that may get rejected from doing, absorbing
business.
companies, buying companies for this particular reason. So when an outage happens, there won't be all of this panic, and it won't all be so finite into a singular point,
Yeah,
as far as a fail point. Yep.
yeah.
All right.
Or
Go
or
ahead.
CrowdStrike could have just done a canary deployment, which a lot of people do. You don't push everything to everybody at one time. You do a strategic rollout
Right.
so
Right.
that you could see, if there are any issues with it. Similar
Right.
how we've talked about before with Apple is, if you have automatic updates installed on your phone, they don't just send everybody the update at the same time. They do it staged and, staggered rotation so that everything doesn't go out all at once. And I see a congressional hearing in the very near future for CrowdStrike. And I hope, because I read some of the incident report that they had from this, and there are some, obvious points of failure in their process that could have mitigated a lot of these problems. But now it's all brought to light, and hopefully they will fix it. And we won't have people still trying to get home 5 days later
Right.
after this outage.
Yep, yep. It's a shame. They picked the wrong time to fly, which is not their fault, but now they sitting in airports looking crazy. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So, moving on to the next story that I got, Rivian, that electric car company, says no to CarPlay, according to Rivian CEO RJ Scaringe. I think that's his name. The company has no plans to add support for CarPlay anytime soon. In an interview with The Verge's Nilay Patel on this Decoder podcast, Scaringe said, "We have a great relationship with Apple. As much as I love their products, there's a reason that ironically is very consistent with Apple ethos for us to want to control the ecosystem. CarPlay isn't quote unquote consistent with how we think about really creating a pure product experience." So basically, all that to say, kind of the breakdown when he said is, well, Apple doesn't adopt, or they are so focused on creating their own special ecosystem for their users.
Hmm.
Why would we adopt CarPlay? We're going to take Apple's stance and we're going to create our own customized, personalized ecosystem for our customers. And the only way we can do that is not allow CarPlay. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on Rivian saying no to CarPlay and whether that does hold any value, that Rivian is saying, you know what, we're going to create our own customized experience. We're going to create our own ecosystem for our
Hmm.
customers, the same way Apple creates their own ecosystem for their customers.
So I think it's interesting because if you remember, I think last year General Motors announced that they would not be implementing CarPlay going forward in their
Hmm.
vehicles as well. And I think what's his name, Scaringer. I think this just is just a big word salad to say that Apple won't give us access. And since
Right.
they
They
won't
won't
give us
get it.
access,
Right. Right.
then we're gonna say no, we won't use you. But the difference is Rivian can build their own ecosystem. However, smartphones, everybody has them. There's a lot
Right.
of Apple smartphones. You can't build your own ecosystem around someone else's ecosystem. There's a certain level of
Right.
integration that you have to have, or you're building these, next gen vehicles, electric vehicles that are supposed to be the wave of the
Hmm.
future, and people are gonna still
Hmm.
have to use, USB-C cables
Bluetooth.
to plug
Right.
and Bluetooth to plug their phones into your vehicles. That's not
And they're only going to
innovative.
be right. And the only thing you're going to be limited to is, taking phone calls and listening to music off of your iPhone. And I'm assuming that he's also going to say no to Android. But if he
Mhm.
doesn't say no to Android and lets people use Android Auto, but doesn't let them use CarPlay, that further cements your idea that since Apple won't give them the data that
Mhm.
people will be using, like consumers will be entering all this personal data. That's information that Rivian can get and say, all right, how are people using their infotainment systems? Are they doing this? Are
Yeah.
they doing that? How
Music,
can we
mapping,
customize our
shopping, what apps do they
right,
have? All
right,
this stuff.
right,
Yeah.
right, right, right. Apple's not giving them any of that. Of course, we've always said time and time again, data is this new gold mine. And
It
since they
is.
can't get any of that, I see how it makes sense. But on the flip side, like you mentioned, the experience is going to be splintered
Yeah.
because I'm going to touch my Rivian dash to get climate, to do mapping, to change my car settings, whether it be memories, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
But then I'm gonna have to use another thing, my phone, when I want to listen to music, when I
Mhm.
want to listen to podcasts, when I want to do whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. So my experience overall as a Rivian user may be
Distracted.
splintered.
Yeah.
And then is that the experience
Is
that
that the customer
Rivian
experience you want your
wants
people to
people to
have?
have?
Yeah.
Because they're not giving up their phones. They're not,
Yeah.
whether it be iPhone or Android. I'm going to get the little magnet and I'm going to prop my
Stick it on there.
phone on the dashboard, and that's what I'm going to be looking
Yeah.
at. In addition to looking at my climate, looking at my speed, looking at my navigation that's in Rivian. So that splitting experience, hopefully, Rivian finds a way around that because people are not giving up their phones to then use something else that Rivian
Something
comes up
else
with.
in addition to
Mhm.
still using their phone. And I think
Right.
it's one of those things where there are a lot of people who, because I'm casually looking at cars, it's one of those
Mhm.
things where there are certain features that I'm expecting out of a vehicle. And if you don't have those things,
That's a check.
which
That's
mainly
not a yep.
around, using your phone because your
Yep.
phone does everything,
Yep.
then I'm not buying that. That's just
Right.
gonna make
Right.
my life even more complicated. No
Yep,
thanks.
yep. That's an automatic. If it ain't
That's a
got
deal
CarPlay or
breaker.
Android Auto,
Yeah.
swipe. Yes.
Next.
So we'll see if right. So we'll see if they can build that experience because a little tangent. Sonos is having the same problem right now. Because I'm a Sonos fan. I have Sonos products in my house, and I have to essentially juggle two different systems. If I'm in Apple Music, I've got my playlist set up. I've got my radio stations, all the thing customized the way I want it. I don't want to have to also do that in the Sonos app. Now, the way they've kind of fixed it is they've allowed me to authorize I have authorized Sonos to kind of look at my Apple Music
Mhm.
data. So they can kind of mirror that experience on the Sonos app. But
Mhm.
Sonos is having a problem with their app that they've launched
Mm.
recently, and they've had to pull back on, they sent out an apology letter. CEO put out
Oh,
one of
wow.
those Apple Notes press releases like, you know what, our bad.
iOS press release.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We've launched this software. We thought it was going to be dope. Y'all hate it. For the past couple of weeks, we've been working hard and we've released these new things. And I don't think that is the experience that Sonos wanted people to have. They could have mitigated all that if they would have just tied closer into the Apple experience, but they wanted that data. They wanted to customize the experience. Now look where you're at. So hopefully Rivian can sidestep that, learn from those mistakes, and hopefully they make an experience that people will definitely buy into. But people ain't giving up their phones.
Yeah, not at all.
All right, so moving on to the last story in the lowdown, I thought this was pretty funny. We talked about the Batterygate settlements, and we talked about the ability for people who had, I think, iPhone 17. I'm sorry, yeah, iPhone, no, not 17, iPhone 7s, iPhone 8s, so on and so forth, that had that Batterygate issue.
Mhm.
Those settlements went out, and I thought this was funny because one of those checks bounced. And so basically everybody could have got a $92.17 check.
Mhm.
And this guy, they talk about how he got the check in January. It was dated January 3rd, but he waited until April 1st to actually cash the check. By April 3rd, my credit union returned the check because for insufficient funds. They said the litigants didn't pay it. So I thought this was funny, even though it's not Apple directly. Since Apple had to pay out the settlement, they
Mhm.
paid the settlement out to a fund, and
Mhm.
basically it was first come first serve. So if you got your
They
check
ran
and
out
you
of
hurried up and cashed it,
money.
if you waited to cash your check, ain't no more money in there. So it's up in the air on what they're
Oh.
going to do, because this story doesn't necessarily say what his recourse is.
Mhm.
But basically he's just out of money until, I'm assuming, the fund re-ups that money. But if Apple already paid all the money,
They've done
I
their
mean,
part.
you just ass out. I don't know what else you can do. The bank ain't issuing the money. Apple ain't issuing the money. It's the
The
fund.
fund is not.
It's the
Oh,
fund is issuing the money. If the fund ain't got no money, they just can't re-up like that, because Apple, especially if Apple, like I mentioned, gave up all the money. So I just thought that was interesting, that
wow.
if you sit on one of those checks, you may be shook.
You may be SOL, friends.
Yep. Yep. Because I think I got one, and I cashed it immediately, just because it's free money. I ain't gonna sit on free money. So I went and deposited my little $92. But feel sad for homeboy who now is looking at a useless $92 check from Apple.
Can't do nothing with it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so that is going to do it for the lowdown. We're going to move into second string. And one of the arguments, the longtime arguments as to why people don't adopt the Android operating system, even though the phones are dope, is because there's so much trash in the Google Play App Store. There are so many rubbish apps simply
Mhm.
because Android is open source and it doesn't
Mhm.
have the same restrictions, doesn't have the same regulations as the iOS App Store. Apple tightly, we can tell from all these stories we've talked about, Epic and all these other companies trying to get side loading apps. They've been fighting for the past decade, if not more, trying to get Apple to open up its grip on the iOS App Store. Not the case with Android. Google Play, you can just make up an app in 2 minutes, submit it, and it will get approved because the regulations and restrictions are different. Well, Google, it looks like they are locking down. Um, Google says it will boot applications that don't meet the new minimum functionality policy out of Google Play on August 31st, 2024. Of course, that depends on Google actually doing that, but they have sent out the threat to say, yo, if your app is whack and it's weak and it doesn't do anything and it sends firmware and it sends spyware and does all these crazy things Android apps have been known to do, if you're still doing that by August 31st, we're kicking your app out. So I just want to get your impression on, will Google actually follow through on this threat?
So it's interesting because people talk so much crap about Apple's App Store and the control that they hang on to. And we see in these instances, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, because people can just throw crap in there and it gets approved. And it's also interesting to note, I want to say earlier this week it was announced that Google was getting rid of their URL shortener, and it would bring a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. So I think it's one of those things where I think they're trying to clean house. They're trying to clean
Mm-hmm.
up because, again, open source, it is a bunch of garbage and junk out there. And I think we will see, especially in the age of cyber attacks, data leaks
Mm-hmm.
that are, just hitting us almost every single day, it feels like. People
And
are
more,
going to.
and to add on to that, more
Mhm.
people only source of internet connectivity is their phone. And
Right.
most of those people do not have six, seven, 800, $900 to buy an iPhone, but they
Right.
do have two, $300 to buy an
An
Android.
Android.
So just
Right.
want to add that tidbit as well. Yeah.
Right. And so it's one of those things where starting to put those constraints on their environments to protect their consumers. I mean, honestly, I don't know what took them so long to get to this point, but it's the right
Mhm,
move. It's a smart move because, like I said, it's almost like every other week there's some huge data leak, data
mhm.
breach, security strike or hack. So I mean, I would hope that they are going to start to rein this in and actually follow through, because at this point, if they don't, they are going to be liable if data gets leaked, because they are allowing garbage to go through their app store. If
Yep.
Apple can be sued for all the many things with their app store that aren't even related to security, it's just people kind of bitching about, I'm not getting enough money back from this. Surely they will get, sued if the app store starts to put viruses and tracking software on people's phones, or whatever the case may be, or their data gets leaked because you know Google allowed an app to come into the app store that was basically like a honey trap to get people's data. So
Mhm,
hopefully,
mhm.
they're going to start to get serious about this, and they are going to actually follow through and start kicking some of these apps out. I mean, I know it would be a huge tech debt to go in and start to review some of these apps and start to kick them out, but I mean, to
Well,
me, I would think it would be worth it.
it shouldn't be that hard because according to the story, example of newly disqualified types of applications include ones that consist of a single ebook or offer just one wallpaper. Google's
Mm,
policy change also rules out apps that are designed to do nothing or have no function. So it may not be hard to weed out a bunch of these whack apps, because just one look at it, you can probably just say, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right. So that is going to do it for second string. We're going to move into for the culture. Unfortunately, there has been another murder, specifically at the hands of the police. And this seems like a super senseless murder, from what I can tell. The young lady's name is Sonya Massey. She was tragically killed or unalived. I'm not sure what the young folks or the acceptable lingo.
They're saying unalive now. That's
Unalived.
political correct.
Okay, all right. So she was unalived. And basically, what happened was, from what I can understand, she called the police
Mhm,
because there was something going on outside of her house, and she didn't know what was going on. Maybe there was an intruder, maybe
mhm.
some unknown activity. So she calls the police. They come in the house. They kind of look around. Two sheriffs, sheriff's deputy, let me get it out. Two cops came. One was a county sheriff. His name was
Mm,
Sean Garrison. He's a 30-year-old white man. They came out to Sonya Massey's house about 1 a.m. and because she called, like I said, to report a potential home intruder. According to this story that I'm reading,
mhm.
they come in the house. Um, she's in the kitchen and she has some food, or well, they're talking to her, and one of the
She's
cops
boiling
notices,
tea.
right, and one of the
Mhm,
cops notices there's a hot pot of stuff on the stove, and
mhm,
he makes mention, it's like, hey, you may want to turn that off because we don't want the house to catch on fire, whatever he says.
mhm,
She goes to the kitchen to turn it off.
mhm.
you know they say something along the lines of, I forget, I don't understand how the conversation went, but it seems like they were joking around. And she says something like, I rebuke you or something.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why that was such a trigger or something like that,
Mhm,
because the officer Sean Grayson draws his gun and says, hey, you put that down right now. This is not a game or something like that.
mhm.
According to the story, she apologizes and
Puts her hands up.
puts the plate down and kind of puts her hands up, and then
Mhm,
he shoots her in the face, which
mhm,
is so crazy.
mhm,
According to the story, the her not his body cam footage was rolling, but the other
Guy.
officers, yeah, body cam was rolling. Um, the other deputy or the other officer try or attempts to um, give her aid, and the guy who shoots her say, "Yeah, don't even bother. She's already gone." But according to the story, she was still kind of breathing or something of that
Mm,
nature. So the other deputy tries to talk to him again. He eventually shot the guy who unalived Sonya Massey officially eventually relents and provides medical assistance. And then the paramedics come up. Of course, they pronounce her dead. And then I don't know if they want to have a conversation or something like that. And they turn off the body cam footage. And again, not and again, but the reason why this came out was because, according to the family of Sonya Massey, they were under the impression that somebody else did it, like there was an actual home intruder.
the police told her that she killed herself.
Right. That's what I was getting to. First, they said
Okay.
it was another intruder, and then they said, "Oh, it may have been a self-inflicted gunshot wound." And so they were told the family was told all this by the police, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually, lo and behold, there was body cam footage, and the body cam footage kind of goes through what specifically happens. The Springfield, Illinois county sheriffs, they fire the guy, and they immediately arrest him and convicted this guy. He pleads
Or
not
charged
guilty.
him.
Arrested him and charged him. He pleads not guilty, and that's where we stand now. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to get your take on, well, more importantly, not more importantly, equally as importantly, according to what I've read about this dude, Sean Garrison, he
Mm.
had been to 3 or 4
It's
different police office,
like five.
yeah, 5.
It's
He's
five.
been moved around a lot, and I get the impression that he was just shifted from one place to another for other incidents. Of course, not this serious, but he's been able to
That
not
we
be a
know of.
good cop that we know of, has been lackluster. But at the same time, he's just been able to go to one police force after another.
After
So
another. Yeah.
my concern is, why is it so hard? Why is it so easy to be a cop these days when you've got all of these serious issues going on, all of these scenarios that cops have to deal with on a daily basis? I'm not saying their job is easy. I think their job is incredibly hard. Shout out to the people that are doing it. They're trying to do it right, and they're trying to do it every day. But in general, I think it should be harder. One of the hardest jobs to get should be a police officer, especially with all the things and potential threats they have to deal with. And when something like this goes wrong, there should be immediately, even before that, there should be, I don't know, SOC evaluation. Well, I don't know what it is. I'm not a professional police officer myself, so I
Yeah.
don't know what kind of training they go through, but it don't seem like enough. So I just wanted to get
It's
your take on the whole scenario, and then what you think should happen next.
it's not enough. I think in order to be a barber or a cosmetologist, you have to have more training than it
Wow.
takes to be a police officer. I think most police training academies are like 6 weeks. I think it takes like 8 to 12 to become a barber or a cosmetologist, and then you have to go to the state to get licensed before you can even practice, and you have to have a certain amount of training hours before you get that. So no, it's not enough training. That people who have the lives of other people in their hand on a daily basis, it's not enough training. There needs to be more. And as far as this whole horrendous case, I first heard about this before the video came out. This apparently happened back, I think, on July 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason we know about this now is because the police department would not release the tape. They wouldn't
Mm,
release the body cam footage. And we're just now getting the body cam footage almost a month later. And what happened, from what I can tell, is the officer who shot Sonya Massey didn't turn his body
mm,
camera on, but the other police officer did before they went in.
mm-hmm,
And this Sean Grayson didn't know that.
mm,
So when they knock on the door, she says, "Don't hurt me." And they both
mm-hmm,
say, "Why would we hurt you? You called us."
mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things where, again, like you mentioned, it was, she, I think she had a boiling water. I think she was going to make some tea. She was anxious, I'm sure, nervous, I'm sure, because, you know, I personally don't know if something like that happened, if I would call the police myself
Right.
because of the danger that's involved with it. Especially,
Right.
I am a licensed and legal um, gun owner.
Hmm.
So that always adds another layer to, am I a threat
Right.
to
And
someone who I call to help me? So that's
right.
already, it's like things that are like stacked, against you about,
Because you are a legal gun owner, so
yeah,
you should be able to let the cops know that
yeah,
say, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm a licensed concealed carry gun owner.
hmm
My gun is so on and so forth," and that should be it. You should be
yeah.
like informing them of what the status is. But
But
in
telling
doing
them makes
so,
you,
right, in doing so, will that automatically
yeah,
make you a threat in their
yeah,
eyes?
yeah,
And we can
yeah,
pretty much say
yeah.
for a certain amount of a surety that it will.
Yeah. And so it's the thing where I don't know how the situation, based on the footage, I didn't watch the video because I don't need to see another Black woman murdered in her home.
Me neither.
And it's been flying over the timeline. I've been turned on, the turned off the automatic play feature on videos because some
Mhm.
stuff people just put it out there and it's
Yeah,
just
they
like,
do.
what what the hell?
Mhm.
Have some couth about yourself. You're putting traumatic events on the timeline, not even caring about who could see this or what the trigger could be. So I
Mhm.
haven't seen it. I've read, some of the things about it. And, that's how I have the context that I have. What I don't understand is, her, I rebuke you or whatever. They can joke, but she can't joke. Or even if she was serious, you mean to tell me that you're so
Right.
threatened by a
So
pot of
boiling
boiling
right.
water that you have to
Right.
shoot this lady in the face? I mean, in the face?
Yeah.
And then when the
Yeah.
other cop comes in, because he was checking the house to make sure everything was safe, and he sees this woman
Mhm.
lying on the floor, bleeding to death, and he's trying to help her. He's
Mhm.
like, nah, she ain't worth it. Save the kit. We can use the kit
Yeah.
for something else. It's very
Yeah.
nonchalant. I've seen some videos of him, and apparently some of the tattoos that he has people thinking
Mhm.
it may be neo-Nazi related. I don't know if that's the
Mhm.
case. I don't know what the symbols are. I don't go looking for that stuff because I don't care about that. But what I do care about is the fact that this man has been with 5 different police stations
Mhm.
within the last, I think the earliest was 2021. I think
Mhm.
started 2021, 2022. We are in 2024. He's been with 5 different stations in different capacities. I think some of them were part time, some of them were full time. I think some of them were he was a police officer, a couple of them he was a sheriff's deputy, one of them I think he was just a sheriff. And so, in addition to that, he had 2 DUIs on his record as well. So the
Mhm.
question
Mhm.
is, why was this man even allowed to be a police officer? This woman should still be alive. Outside of, her calling for help, this man shouldn't have even been able to access her or her
Mhm.
home. And the fact that I think I saw somewhere that it said that he was like, I'll shoot you in the face, I'll shoot you in the face. And that's what he did.
Mhm.
You expect civilians to be cool and calm and collected in these stressful situations. And at the same time, a police officer, if they're scared, they can just say, "Oh, I fear for my life," and shoot somebody.
Right. Right.
You're
Why
expecting more from
right.
civilians in a
Why we
stressful
gotta be the
situation.
ones
Right.
yeah, why we gotta be the ones to de-escalate? Why we gotta be calm,
Right.
cool, and
When
collected, and that
it's your actual job. You're actually
to
being
protect and
paid,
serve.
right, to
Right.
do that. And you're not doing it. And
Nope.
it's just
Eh,
one more instance of a Black woman being murdered in her
mhm.
home where she should be safe by people who
Mhm.
are paid to protect her and and allow her to feel safe. And they knew that she was scared of them when they first walked into the door because
Right.
she told them, "Don't hurt me."
Yeah,
And
which
what
which leads me to believe that there's something more to this dude in general. And then, of course, with the police, just wanted to read this other part. While speaking to Gail King on CBS Mornings, Massey, Massey's father, James Wilburn, and his family were, like I mentioned, were misled by the police and not initially informed that a deputy was responsible for his daughter's death. And they go on to quote and say, "We were under the impression that she was killed by our intruder or some other person from the street or something." And they just went in there, the cops, and found her dead body, adding that it was his brother who discovered that the officers were involved. So the officers didn't even tell the family up front that they were involved. They said or gave the impression that another intruder did it. And then came the story that it was possibly a self-inflicted gunshot wound, they said. So I think the cover-up just started right after it happened.
Mhm.
Thank God for the body camera footage. Is probably the most horrible and heart-wrenching thing we've ever had to see in our lives. But if
Yeah,
it were not for the body cam footage, we would not have known
they
that
wouldn't
this
know.
occurred. The fact that not only did the cops itchy trigger fingers, and I think the dude, I don't
I
know.
think he set out to murder her. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want
He
to
wanted to
go
kill
that
somebody, and she was it.
right. I didn't want to go that far, but I mean, we're all thinking it, right?
Right.
In addition to that, cops immediately go into, well,
Protect mode.
we need to go into protect mode. We need to protect ourselves and not even think about, hey, this was a terrible accident, or, this was something that, just couldn't be avoided. Let's do the right thing and
Yeah.
be upfront and be transparent with what's going
Transparent.
on, especially all the things that are happening in the news in the past couple of years. We need to, they're still going through the same after George Floyd,
Same stuff.
after this the
Philando
same
Castile, same.
it's
Breonna
same
Taylor,
MO. It's the same
Atiana
MO.
Jefferson, same thing.
The same
Same
MO.
thing.
Nothing's changed. Nothing
Nothing.
at all has changed. After you would think, at the very least, cops would be like, all right, here's the new game plan. We have to do this differently. We have to do this different. If you want to keep your job, if you want to keep your status, if you want to keep us doing whatever, this is the new game plan. They ain't even changed the game plan since day
And
one.
this
And
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 the
I think
sad
that's telling.
th- and the really, really sad thing about this is this family is going to sue, which they should. If
Hmm.
I were them, I would sue every last single police um uh
Station that
department
that passed them around.
that passed
Yeah.
them around. I'd sue
Hmm.
every last single one of them.
Hmm.
Um And the sad thing is they're going to sue, they're going to win, and they're going to win a
Hmm.
lot of money. But the
Hmm.
money is going to come from the taxpayers who
Right.
had no hand
Come
in
from
this.
insurance money. Hmm.
Instead of this coming from this guy's pension
And
or
they're
the
the police
police
budget.
fund
Right.
or
Uh-huh.
budget, whatever. No, who's going to be responsible for cleaning up this mess that this man
Mhm.
has made are going to be the citizens who
Yep.
this could happen to as well
Yep.
because they live in this area. So it's one of
Mhm.
those things where it's just I'm tired. I'm really
Yeah.
tired of having to say her name, have these same conversations because it really is insanity because we keep doing the same thing and nothing is changing. Nothing is
Over
changing.
a boy over a pot of water, even if it was true, and even if she was twitchy and didn't trust them, or something was going on in her psychologically to where she did come at them with boiling hot water.
Don't you
It's
got a
just
taser
boiling hot water. It's just, you could duck, you can move, you could tackle her. You don't have to shoot this lady in the
in the face?
specifically in the face, which leads me to believe I think he had set out. It's either mentally or maybe, I'm assuming this, not assuming, she was black. This officer was white. I don't know if it
He'd
was a
get away
racial
with it.
thing.
I'm a
I don't
police
know if it
officer. I
I
can do
don't
what
know
I
if it was
want.
right. I don't know if it was an immunity thing or whatever this qualified
Or
immunity thing
people
is
are
going
saying
on.
the tattoos that he has
Mhm.
are, neo-Nazi related. He's like, I want to
Right.
kill a black person, so hey, let's kill a black person.
Yeah. It's
It's
gotta be
definitely
something.
more to
It
the
can't just
story,
be,
and I
I feared.
think,
Yeah, I feared for my life.
yeah, because you can't. We got the
Mhm.
body camera footage, and you don't say any of that. So I don't know if any of
Right.
this is going to come out at the trial. The real reasoning, probably not, because he's probably not going to um, speak in his own defense, and
I doubt it.
only he knows
Right. And I'm
why
pretty sure.
he did. And the other cop wasn't even in the room, so he can't even say. He maybe can
r
give some context, into the day, maybe what was leading up or how he was acting. But again, he's not likely going to go against another cop. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
he'll just
I
I
think
don't
I think the cops are going to serve this dude up because this was pretty blatant and pretty ridiculous and pretty
know.
outright for him to not get prison some serious prison time. He
Yeah.
this may be
This might be
unprecedented
the one,
where he
the
goes where
single
he
one.
goes to where he goes to prison for 45 to life,
Yeah.
right? You know, when everybody else can get out in 8 or
Yeah.
5 or 12 years. I think this guy, he's going to get served
He's
up
gonna do
for
all
real
his time. The
because
same with what's the
but at
other
the
guy? Darren, whatever the
uh
guy who George Floyd?
I don't
What
think he's going to be in prison forever. I had to look it
oh,
up,
he's not?
but
Mhm.
I think he may get out before he dies.
Oh.
I
But
have to look it up.
I think
Yeah.
this guy, the way that the police
Mhm.
station, department, or whatever was like, we're firing this guy immediately. This is not what we want. This is not what's supposed to happen. They seem pretty forceful, but at the same time, you lied in the beginning. It's
Mhm.
easy to come back and say, oh, this was wrong, this was bad, after the evidence has come out. But before the evidence came out, you were like, oh no, we got to
Mhm.
cover this up. So I don't give them too much either because this was effed all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So enough of that. That's
Yeah.
enough sad news.
It's so sad. It's so
We're going
sad.
to move on to the hookup, to where we talk any sort of tips. And a tip that I have, I give you a little backstory. So my wife was competing in a singing contest, and after each round, the singing contest wanted us to vote. So you had to go on their website and vote for the contestant who you wanted to win. Well, you could only vote once a day, but you could vote, you know, on different devices, whatever the case may be, but you could only vote once a day. There were some times to where I would go on and vote and it would say you've already voted. And I'm like, no, I voted
That was
yesterday
yesterday.
around this time. I should be able to go in and vote. So
Mhm.
normally what I would do is I would go into my browser, the browser settings, and I would clear my cache.
Mhm.
So then the website would say, oh, yeah, this is a newly returning device, you know, since last night or like
Mhm.
yesterday, now he can vote, right? But the way I was going through, specifically with Safari, the way I was going through and deleting the cache, the way I know how is to open up the settings app and then scroll down to Safari and then scroll all the way down to it's called clear history and website data. So you would
Mhm.
do that, then it would clear the data. Then I could go back into the Safari app, refresh the window, and then vote again. Well, my took up for the week is there's a quicker way to actually clear your cache, and you can do it inside of Safari. And basically, the way you do it is you open up the Safari app, then you click on at the bottom or at the top, depending on where your URL window box is. You click the little bookmark icon, which looks like a book opening up. You click that, and then lo and behold, on the lower right hand side of your screen, there's a clear button. If you tap the clear button, it'll give you the same options to clear your cache as you would going into the iPhone settings app. You can clear from the last hour, for today and yesterday, or you can clear all history. You click the clear history, and then it'll actually clear your cache. So then, without even getting out of Safari, you can clear the cache that way. So that is my hookup for the week. If you
Nice.
want to quickly clear your cache, you don't have to leave Safari. You just go open up the bookmark, go into history. You can clear your cache that way. All right,
Nice.
so that is my hookup for the week. And Nika, if you don't have anything else,
Nope.
tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere.
And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BrothaTech. If you want to report, if you want to connect, you want to comment, you want to share, you want to support the show, if you want to find out all the information about us, about the show, and how you can show us some love, please go to snobOScast.com to get all those details. And until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.